Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into tag-based service mapping. This is a webinar that's part of the ITOM visibility and Cloud Accelerate topics. So we'll have future topics and we'll actually show what we're doing in the next session at the end of this session here. So just real quick, future webinars and meetups. You can scan this, John. I'm not sure if they can scan this or not, but I know that we've made some changes, but give that a shot. And then we also have a link that we'll paste in the chat here, so you can open up that link and check it out. All right, so just a little bit of housekeeping. Just to let you know, everybody's line is muted. Please use the Q&A feature to ask questions throughout the webinar. And then feel free to introduce yourself when you ask the question. We'd love to know who you are. And please participate in the polls. It helps our presenters gain an understanding of where you are in your current deployment journey. And after this, this session is being recorded and it will be shared on the ServiceNow community and on YouTube for future playback. And then after the webinar ends, you will be prompted to fill out a short survey. Your feedback is greatly appreciated and very valuable to us to help us improve these webinar sessions in the future. And if there are things that you would like to hear, just let us know. Okay, so who am I? My name is Derek Kitzelman. I am an outbound product manager for the ITOM Visibility and Cloud Accelerate business unit at ServiceNow, and I'll be your host for this session. And I also have on here the man of the hour and who you're really here to listen to is Bill Ifland. Bill's product success technical director here at ServiceNow as well. Bill, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, real quickly. Yes, I've been on the platform, like it says, since 2007 as a practitioner in heavily regulated industries like power and banking. And I joined the ServiceNow uh, mothership back in 2018 as a ITOM Ranger to basically share my experience and knowledge and practitioner um, uh, just experiences with the community. So I'm glad to be here. Lots of stories to share, but I'll stay focused today.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And then we also have John Mario De Luigi, who is my colleague in the outbound product management for the ITOM visibility. He's going to help field questions that we get in Q&A. All right, so safe harbor notice. We're not really planning on any forward-looking statements, but if you do hear anything that sounds like future capabilities or functionality, please don't make any investment or purchasing decisions as, roadmaps change and, just have to put that in there, keep the lawyers happy. All right, so quick agenda overview. We're going to do an overview of service mapping, and it is going to be just a poll and two slides, and then Bill's going to take it away. So we're just going to talk about service mapping, why it matters, and we'll get into the deep dive how-to demo, and then a Q&A. Real quick, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll here. Which ServiceNow service mapping options are you familiar with and have you tried? Or are you currently using? Select all that apply. So we'll let that poll go here, and I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next slide here. All right, so we've got several different options. I've got the three main options out here. I need to get an updated slide for our service graph option as well. We've got top down, so that's leveraging patterns, and that's really doing a deep surgical dive, to where we're executing patterns, parsing out configuration files, looking at TCP, et cetera, right? And establishing connections between the components in a given application service, right? That is really probably the most difficult version of service and probably the oldest, our first venture into service mapping. Yeah, so and when I was a customer, that's what I used as a customer. Then we have machine-based service mapping. So that's where when we do horizontal discovery, we're capturing TCP data, running process data, and then we're leveraging the predictive intelligence capabilities within the platform to generate clusters of connectivities between that over known ports and establishing and building out candidates that you can present to your application owners and then build the application service and then work on getting it built out more completely so you can operationalize those, right? And then what we're going to talk about today is tag-based service mapping. So when we do cloud-based discovery, whether that's on-prem or one of the public cloud providers, we discover tags, so those key value pairs, and then we, build out categories and service families for those key value pairs, so we can generate, service maps for the resources that share values for those key value pairs. So yeah, that's the three main versions that we have. We also have service graph connector based service mapping, which we can ingest data from what do you call it? Service graph connectors at Dynatrace, AppD, OTel, Azure, AWS, and build out service mapping there. So just sharing out, it looks like 81% of you are using top-down, 59 tag-based, ML-based 21, and then 20% are using SGC. So awesome. Thank you for that detail. We really appreciate it. All right. So why does service mapping matter, right? When we think about visibility, ITOM visibility, and specifically, it's really about establishing, the foundation for technology excellence, right? And really being able to understand what is deployed out in your environment and what's deployed, how does that support the business, that your IT organization is helping support, right? So, and understanding that in a services fashion. So whether it's, you're doing AI ops, asset management, change management, risk, security, cloud transformation, all of those things, visibility is that foundation, and getting that business context of the resources that are deployed out in your environment helps you understand what the impact of change is, when there's an incident, help you identify, detect that and identify the root cause and remediate quicker, from an asset management perspective, being able to charge back or understand what assets support that. So then you can do effective, enterprise architecture or application portfolio management and do the life cycles and upgrade or swap things out or rationalize before it really starts impacting users, right? So that is my last slide. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a demo, and I'm going to hand it over to Bill because he's really the star of this webinar. So Bill, go ahead and hand it over to you.
All right, folks. All right, folks. Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you for joining us today. If you've seen any of my other material, this may be a little familiar, but I want to definitely walk us through some of the finer details and set up what the demo is going to be about. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see my tag-based service mapping deep dive cover slide. Is that true? All right, thank you, folks. So again, safe harbor, quick agenda here, and I use my hands, and actually I probably need to go off video once we start doing the demo. But I'm going to look at our application, business application, so I'll sprinkle in some CSDM as well. So our business application is MediaWiki, and we're going to build an application service of this, right? What are the infrastructure components that make up my service? Application service, that is. And so we'll talk about aspects about tag-based mapping and a little bit about the approach and some advantages or some quick wins when you're using tag-based approach service mapping. And then we'll get into the live deep dive. So again, as we go into this, yes, the big picture, the why, the visibility of tying all of our processes together through a common component or a common view of the world, the application service. Um, but I'm going to focus on technology or focus on functionality right now. So that's still in the back of my mind, but I'm going to go into the technologist mode for the rest of the seminar. So what we have here is a two-tier application with a front-end load balancer, and we're going to focus on the production app service. So you saw here I had the CSDM components, right? A business application, MediaWiki without the version number. What's my business service? We're talking about collaboration and documentation support or delivery from our IT tools here. And we have offerings of production and non-production documents. And you see over here also on the far right, we have a development app stack and we have a production one, but we're going to focus just on the production. So we have a server that is a software load balancer running HA proxy that has a pool of servers running Apache web technology, PHP. And those are my 3 web servers, and they're distributed in my virtual data centers. So here I'm even employing the concept of multi-data center just by my naming convention, the 4 through 6 characters here. And lastly, all the web servers talk to a database server. So it's pretty simple top-down application, but we're going to focus really, rather than using discovery patterns, we're going to use the tagging, the name value pairs that were applied to these devices when they were provisioned, right? That's ideally when those things would occur. At provisioning, through either service catalog workflow, we label it, or the team that actually builds the virtual machines, they would be tagging it as well, right? So there's a definitely, there's some dependency on nice, strong process with some strong tag categorizations. So we're going to focus on tag based, but we can use all of these mapping capabilities, mapping methods to build our service of the same application. But when we think about tag based, we're probably talking more about on-prem virtualization through something like VMware or NetScaler, or some cloud-based delivery, right? So I'm going to continue to use this, I guess we'd say, infrastructure as a service, running applications, either on-prem or in the cloud. But this is also good for our other virtualization technology through Kubernetes or OpenStack. But for the ease or the use of the demo, I'm going to use essentially, virtual machines in the cloud or virtual machines in VMware that are running a server OS that are hosting or running applications. So some quick technical aspects for those that want to get into the CMDB tables and weeds here, right? The name is tag-based application services. It's the table name by that, service by tags, which its parent class is calculated services, and its grandparent class, if you will, is the discovered application service class. So it is a unique class, but it is also enveloped by discovered application services. Unique to the service type is tag-based for value, and it does require the service mapping plugin. So this is a licensed feature in our visibility space. And some key technical aspects also, the entry point to a tag-based map comes from the tag definition itself. It's a manual entry point pointing to the tag-based record, and that becomes your highest level node on your map. And then the rest of the data is coming from our CMDB category, our key value table, and we're bringing that data based on the name value pair and traversal rules to build relative topologies. So that's the technical piece. Now, when it comes to implementing, right, we really want to use these for simple service membership, right, where we're talking about stacks or towers of containers where, what's running on bare metal OS application, or what's in our Kubernetes, perhaps uh, images on our pods and our nodes as containerized columns or containerized stacks. It's not a topology of the load balancer talking directly to a web server, talking directly to a database server. They're all a part of the service map, but they're independent towers, and we'll see that, and I'll kind of point that out. They are built automatically once you establish, the what uh, tag values and tag keys I'm going to be using. So we would use the CI tag category functionality to normalize or take the various keys and put them into the same bucket. And then once we do those categorizations, we can group them together to create what we call families, but it gives you the concept of a tag could be application name, or it could be location, or it could be environment. And then we bring those categories together so that we can say things like production application, or applications at a particular location, right? If I have multiple data centers. So we're going to touch a little bit of that as I go through the demo. And so there, like anything, right, there's trade-offs. There's some considerations here, right? We need to have a well-defined and maintained tagging strategy to get the most value. We can still start if we have a immature or growing tag world. And I'm thinking, kind of speaking to a future seminar, using tag governance to help to clean up or maintain the existing ones. But you can still build a tag-based map without a well-defined tagging strategy. And you might be able to do it more manually, and I'm going to show a small snippet there. One recommendation also, once you build a tag category, I would really recommend, as far as a practicality, consumption, usage, impact to your users, I would refrain from deleting anything once you build a tag category, because it becomes immutable. The values become immutable in the tag service definition. So you may create some, if you will, orphans or some service maps that all of a sudden once were existing, now they'll be blank or no children CIs on it. And you would leverage, again, the same approach about tag-based service families. If you want to change the order, I started out with location and then did application as secondary, but I really thought, well, maybe I really need to do application first and location second. Please consider just rebuilding that tag family with the right order versus trying to manipulate or try to go behind the scenes and change that ordering. Again, it's not recommended. You could find yourself, breaking things that used to work, and it's just a safer bet just to start fresh. And then likewise, or lastly, really not likewise, but lastly, tag-based service traversal rules add relationships to topology stacks. This is not like, again, a relationship from a load balancer to its pool members or a web server to a database server topology. This is within the operational stack from like bare metal up. And we're going to go through some examples of those. So as we go forward here, just some real quick thought process here is that there is an approach when you can use tag-based services. You can use them really at any time, but if you really have a heavily platform as a service or using containers and microservices, that's pretty much the prescriptive way to go, is tag-based. But you could still build, and what I'll be showing today, still build a less, a more of a lightweight application stack, still using tag-based. And it uses the runs on or hosted on topologies. These topologies come from either directly from Cloud Discovery or from Better Together when you're using Service Graph connectors per se, or using horizontal discovery in parallel with Cloud Discovery. And there's multiple combinations of that. But again, the idea here is who's a member of my service? That's the takeaway, right? If I'm doing change management, notifications, I'm doing ITOM health, is the CI a member of a service and who am I impacting? So that's kind of the big picture that Derek was showing at the very beginning. And it's that, I have a CI that's vulnerable. There's a service that it belongs to, and who does it impact, right? Still using that application service built with tag-based mapping, but that becomes, the connectivity, if you will, the underpinning to support all of that visibility beyond ITOM. So any tough questions come through, Derek, John? Anything I need to cover again? I'm looking at the QA button here, and it looks like there's perhaps more questions in there. Anything that's very specific we can answer right now?
Yeah, I think, Bill, there are a few questions, especially the first three. So we received a few questions around mandatory tags and specifically for cloud resources and for tag-based service mappings. Maybe you can give a bit of recommendations rather than mandatory tags lists.
Yeah, so mandatory, right? I would say there is no mandatory feature in but you can use tag governance to measure those things that your organization would consider mandatory. But I would say in my own practice, the minimum set, and that's going to be a part of the demo, I need something that gives me the name of the application or application service that CI belongs to. So in my case, it's MediaWiki. So a key called application or app ID or name and the value of MediaWiki. Another great key or another great tag would be the environment or who owns it, right? Usually that can be a cost center or a department, a manager, and also location. My recommendation for folks that are just getting new or getting into this, or they've got, very minimal keys, try to start out with application ones and environment ones. So as we go forward, here's the recipe. We need a good source, right? Cloud-based discovery first, and perhaps service graph connectors can too, right? As a third-party mechanism, bringing in your resource and using the tag value pairs. So and for our sake of our demo, I'm going to use on-prem cloud or VMware. To make it more robust, either leverage more features like deep discovery with AWS, or have horizontal discovery also working in tandem so that we can bring in things like the OS layer and bringing in the application CI layers. So notice it's virtual machines and VMware CIs that are, I guess you would say, more traditionally or more by design what are tagged, right? Those are going to be what you would say list tagged CIs. And then traversal rules will bring in the last two, servers and applications, in most generic cases. Sometimes the service graph connector can bring all of it, but if cloud plus horizontal discovery gives you, I would say, a great outcome, gives you the most flexibility. And so once we get those tags, we look at the tag table and we would analyze the key value pairs, right? Do some sort of grouping, analytics, commonality, right? So this can be done in a vacuum with the service mapping team, but usually it's best to work with the teams that are provisioning it, or the cloud team, or even the service owners, right? And hopefully that fundamental, I got an app ID or a name or an application, and then I also have environment. Next, you would build CI tag categories if you're looking to make this more of a factory, but you can do it from the managed services UI under CSDM. Then you would build the tag-based families by combining those tag categories, and then you would start working with the map candidates. So this might be a little remedial for some, or brand new for others. But this is looking at turning this into more of a factory rather than doing onesie twosies from the CSDM UI. The CSDM UI, can take once you already have some things established. Perhaps this is where new users or new service owners would register it. And of course, building the traversal rules out for some of those non-tag CIs, right? These are the CIs that come through relationships. All right, let's see. Got about 20 to 25 minutes for the deep dive. I'll take another question really quickly, John.
Yeah, so we have a few, specifically one about the CIs, and especially for complex environments, basically where we'll have CIs with a short lifespan and tags that will be constantly changing. Specifically, the question is there any CI counts limitation with tag-based service mapping?
So if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's a 10,000 item restriction on most, right? Dynamic CI groups, 10,000 items on the discovered side. So if there is a way to even minimizing having a map that wide, right? Because thinking of your foundational elements, be it a node or a virtual machine, right? If you're pulling back more than 100 at any one time, right, then you're building a traversal stacks on those. The tag-based map, from a visual perspective, loses the fidelity and the functionality from a visual user consumer perspective. Now, from a system perspective, for those that are very familiar with the tables, Service CI Association, Service Configuration Item Association, that is a roll-up of all of the configuration items that are on your service map, and those that have been pulled in either through traversal rules or through infrastructure rules, like I'm thinking about config files that might be tracked configuration files, or it might be some virtual layers that that are considered off map, but they are part of the infrastructure. Those things get pulled into that Service CI Association, and that is, that's what we're really going to go for, if you will, right? Am I a member of my configure service map? And then I can put that, as impact on my change ticket, so I can get the right cab approvals, or I can do impact on my incident tickets to say, okay, which service owners or which business units, if you will, are being impacted. And the same from an ITOM health perspective, or even SecOps perspective. I've got vulnerable CIs that are now a member of this service. Who do I call? So it becomes that conduit from infrastructure technology to the service to the blast radius of who's using it. Hopefully that brought some more clarity.
Yeah, Bill,
So
just really quickly, maybe you can explain a little bit more about the entry point and how the entry point is considered with tag-based service mapping, as we had a couple of questions in the chat.
sure. So I'll use I will use my current slide to do that, and I'll bring it back up in the demo. Pardon me. So the definition of a tag-based application service takes my tag categories from my family and puts it in as metadata. That metadata establishes the query conditions, if you will, of that service. So if you see here, the service itself, where you see media, wiki, I know it's small here, prod tag based, that's my CI of my application service, my tag based application service. That becomes the top most CI. So it might look to some, if you're familiar with top down, hey, that's my first entry point. It's just a placeholder. So when you see here that I've only been able to bring in the virtual machine instances, if there's nothing that matches my tag definition or tag family definition, or or I haven't populated it yet first, I would only have the top two icons, the arrow in my service. There would be no membership yet. So that's another one of the, I guess you would finer details. Every service in itself is a member of the Service CI Association table. So it's just that in a tag-based world, we make it visible. In top-down or machine learning, the container, the canvas is the name of the service. But here, it's just one of the deeper dive, finer exceptions. The Service CI itself is on the map. And that gives us a lot of flexibility, both with our Service Graph connectors, ITOM Health, when we want to attach alerts to it. Alrighty, so let's see. I'm going to go into so when we go into the demo, we're going to actually end up with a service map that looks like this. So you already can tell things are going to get a little busy if you get more than, say, 100 CIs on a screen. So, alrighty, bear with me as I switch screens. Okay, share again. Let's see, I may need to log in again, but let's try this. So I briefly, let's see what my timeline. Okay, I got about 20 minutes still. Okay, so there's many ways to get to application services. There's the CI form itself, just like you would have an incident form, change form, user form, group form. Each of the classes actually have their own form. There's also the service mapping forms. Those are the ones where a service mapper would be using to do the looking at the respective CI types out here, and just going to click on one of them. And that CI form, excuse me, the mapping service form doesn't look exactly like the generic form, if you will. So this is a curated form, and then where it has multiple views. So in a way, you can call this a UI page. And then the last or the third way to look at services is through the managed technical services part of the CSDM. So under managed technical services, we have another list view, but when we actually go into one of these maps, let's see, I'm going to do the top-down discovery one here. We're more presented with a UI wizard. So we build out the details and we select the population method. But once you've added the method, then we can, I know it may be some getting used to at first, but the different screens and when you click more details or advanced will take you to different forms. And so going to the advanced or the view from here will take us into the service mapping perspective. So depending on your persona, you may be only presented with one of these, but I'm specifically going to be looking at the tag mapper at the moment. And so while we're here in our, so one quick and dirty way to build a tag map, and this is just a quick and dirty to get, just to show you that the capability is there. Let's see. And you don't have tag categories quite laid out, and you don't have the tag families built. You can come to the population method and choose a method and look for tags But instead of using the category families, right, which I'm going to walk through application by environment, I can just arbitrarily, based on knowledge of what tags may be out there, and I can pull in the CIs that match. And then this would become the definition of my tag map. I would have app ID as my key, my value would be MediaWiki, and that would be the definition of at the current moment of my tag-based map. So you can, if you will, you can do based on filters, pull this data in from the tag table and build a map. I want to focus more on the steps that I talked about earlier. Let's make this more of a factory rather than one-offs. And I'm going to basically walk through how to do it from the service families that we saw before, or I mentioned before, excuse me. So let's do those steps that I laid out, right? I trust that I have good horizontal discovery. I've got, first and foremost, I have good cloud or virtual machine discovery. So that's going to bring in all of my various tag values, right? Key values. As a recommendation, and hopefully you guys can come back to this or take even a screenshot, I like to recommend, let's see, excuse me, configuration. Forgive me. The list layout. Coming into the table for the very, very first time, you usually have just the configuration item, the universal tags column, and the key value pair. The tags column is just what it is arbitrary tags on any record in ServiceNow. This is not to be confused with the key value pair coming in. And the tag table is, or column, is a legacy column coming from the VMware probe. And it just has one value, tags. So usually I like to hide these just so that there's better absorption or better understanding of what my tags are. And I like to bring in the class and perhaps, most recent discovery and discovery source. So if I have a multi-source CMDB set up, I like to know where my CIs are coming from. So we can start, again, the approach is doing some sort of analytics on the keys. And I go back to those recommended keys that are like application, location, environment are the good ones to start with. Just foundations. And you can always come back, add more keys, or excuse me, CI tag categories, and then you can continue to build out your tag families. And as a part of this approach, right, we can find that I've got some out here that look like they could be applications, like my MediaWiki, or my Kubernetes platform in the cloud, right? I've got various things out here, but there might be things that may not apply directly as an application. They may be more contextual or a component of a Kubernetes space or some other microservice. But let's look at the so-called big rocks. Let's look at the standard ones. And I've seen in a lot of practice typos. So I might have applications with being pluralized, being all caps, being typoed. And that's why you can use the CI tag category to help take those variations and blend them into one key. So taking the one key, so I did that not only for application, but I did it some for location, and I've done it for environment. So again, another opportunity to manage values. Now, I do have to say right now with our tag technology, right, if there's variations on the tag value, like typos, or just, again, dev versus development, currently, those would be distinct in different types of definitions under the tag family. So there are ways to manage that through tag governance. So So if I have a misspelling or mislabeled, the, the opportunity to fix it is going back to the owner of this configuration item and do those things to repair those. And you can do that with tag governance as well to push back. So that's left for another discussion. So once I put together my tag categories, after I did all that analytics, right, I mentioned the various ways you could spell out application, and I did focus on environment as another a possibility for keys. And I like to put the word key up here so that it helps me understand what key values that I'm looking for as far as a normalized concept. After I build those tag categories, of course, then I can jump into my tag families. Excuse me, I went a little too far. Tag families, and I'm just focusing right now on my 2 keys in order. And once you've established that, right, we can make these nightly as my environment changes. My nightly job will update the service candidates, or I can force the job to rerun the candidates. And then this becomes more of a hands-on adoption or hands-on approval now. So once I have my service candidates out there, and I did not put staging back into the pool here, but the you would see all possible combinations that have not been mapped. So, so perhaps to establish that, let's see if I can just quickly. I'm going to delete my service. So notice as it's deleting here, right? It's using my key values in the right order, in the specific order. So, and those key values become the default naming convention, right? The key name and the environment name, excuse me, application name, environment name become a part of my ordering here. So it should still be the same thing that we saw before. The application key, media wiki, and the environment staging. So it's as simple as selecting it, map selected, and then once it gets mapped, you would have to recalculate it, because at this time, all it has done is establish the record and its definition. And you can change this name as you see as I changed up here. So as we really kind of squeezing the time here, let's go into the prod base map and really quickly look at its, and again, I'm looking at the form value right here. And you notice this manual endpoint is the pointer to itself for this map. This definition of category values is supposed to be treated as immutable. So my advice is do not try to do any rewrites or reworking of this value, or try to change it here manually, because then the candidates will come back and fill in the gaps. So you can start either generating orphans or generating duplicates. So that's my guidance. Do not play with this. And you have 2 links here about listing CIs when it comes to a tag-based map. The first one, of course, is which CIs are tagged in the CMDB that belong to this, as opposed to all the CIs based on the traversal rules and endpoints. So notice here that when CIs are added to a tag-based map, they're actually created with manual endpoints. So that is to keep parity with all the other types of mapping, machine learning, as well as top-down. Because and that's another discussion for another day, is the architecture behind the service mapping relationships. But just know that between 2 CIs on a screen in service mapping, there's an endpoint CI that's in between the 2. Because I'm not using any of the traversal rules right now, only the CIs that were tagged are showing up. And this will be the picture of the same map that we saw earlier. Notice that each one of these is a virtual machine CI, not the OS that's running it. If I had AWS Deep Dive, or if I'm running Cloud Discovery, I will get the OS servers in my CMDB and in my tags value table, tag key value table, and they would be ready for consumption. Virtual machines and containers are available out of the box. Right now, the virtual machine instance and instantiation of the OS is a different relationship type. And I'm going to open up those traversal rules next. So right now, all we're doing is putting on the map the CIs that literally match the categorization value. So if I go back here, and now I'm in the service mapping UI, service mapping form, and notice that these values are all read-only, and it's likewise with the actual manual entry point. This is read-only as well. So how do we get more fidelity on the service map? And that's through traversal rules. And we can add things up and down on a service map. And notice the information that we're literally coming from on our service CIs, right, is going to come from the CMDB rel CI table. So this is a parent-child combination that is in our CMDB rel CI table. So if I go back to the map, I'm just going to go view it, and I'm going to look at my load balancer, right? Here's my load balancer. My APP 0, 1, and 2 are my database, excuse me, web servers, and my database server is DB01. But I'm just going to look at the server itself, the virtual machine CI itself, excuse me. So if I go to it, and I should see in the relationships, and I'm only looking for the first level, it should be hosted by a data center. And given that relationship here, I can take that and put it into my service map. So this being the parent, this CI being the child, and I can use the traversal rule to bring that in. So I'm going to go ahead and make this traversal rule active. And so thinking out loud, if you're running virtual environment from multiple data centers or multiple vCenters, this will tell you which vCenter it belongs to. And by enabling the actual traversal rule, I do have to make it use it by recalculating the service. And so now, again, my list tag CIs are just my virtual machines. But now my tagged CI, excuse me, my traversal level, the CI should be bringing in more data, like my vCenter, and now that's going to be put on the map. So I'm building it as a stack. So all my servers are hosted in one vCenter. Well, what about the server OSs? Maybe I'm monitoring those, or that's what I'm putting in my change tickets. And that's where we would go back to our traversal rules. And this one had to be created. So if we look at this CI relationship here, it instantiated a Linux server. This one has to, and again, we need to look at this in a reversed section because Linux server here is a child in the relationship in the rel table, but here we had to flip the direction because I want the OS to sit on top of my virtual machine instance, just like I would think of it in my bare metal data center perspective. And in doing that, I'll just go through the steps. To create one, the idea here is you have to create it brand new. If you try to manipulate the existing virtual machine one, you're going to break those relationships, because virtual machine from the cloud discovery, the relationships are different than from the VMware probe. But to get there, normally you would create a new relationship rule definition by the type. So in this case, my type was OS server, so I can put in server. Typically, it's listed as hardware or from a more global response. But let's see if I can find server in here. And seem to be CI server. There we go. And its relationship here is the instantiated by and VMware virtual machine.
Bill, we're not seeing the pop-up.
Oh, you're not. Oh, my bad.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I apologize, team. Once we build all of that, you can save it by putting in the reverse. So what it will look like at the end of just following the click-through. Beautiful. Let's do that again. Let's do group by created by. Here we have hardware is instantiating the instantiated by the virtual machine. This is actually flipped in the rel CI table, so that's why you have to say true here. And by adding that back to the map, now we will get OSs on our map, and then this will be kind of the closeout of our live demo. So I go back to the definition, and not only is that virtual transversal rule, being leveraged, also is the runs on relationship for applications that are building out on this same service map. So now we actually have the concept of what I was suggesting, that we have towers. We have a tower that reflects my load balancer. Not only is it, this is the CI that's tagged, the virtual machine layer, but through traversal rules, I know which vCenter it lives in, what OS it's instantiating, and which application CIs are actually running on. And here's my load balancer. So you see, this is the stack. It's not topology from server to server to server, but this is more of a stack or microservices. And each one of these objects now will be listed in the Service CI Association table, which really is the underpinning of this list CI. So if I come in here, I can actually see all of my various CIs that were pulled in. Again, emphasis was these were the only CIs that were actually tagged from my discovery source, from provisioning. The rest of the data, my vCenter, traversal rule. My OS servers, traversal rule. Items that are running on my traversal rule, my servers, was another traversal rule, the runs on. So still more deep dive available, but I wanted to really bring home what the art of possibility is and how you can really rapidly have a set of services to now be going back to Derek's original why screen or why slide of it's going to support AI ops, it's going to support change, it's going to support vulnerability. So hopefully this has been a good session for everybody. I would love to answer more of your questions, so I'm going to take those back and we'll get them back to Derek and John. So back to you, Derek.
Okay. Yeah, just one of the questions that we have unrelated, which really wanted to answer is, the other ones we can answer offline, but if a new CI is discovered and matches the tags to an already existing service, will the CI be automatically added? And on the flip side, if it's decommissioned, will it fall off the map?
Fabulous question. And that is a part of the design of tag-based mapping. So the frequency of the tag-based maps getting updated, right? There's a job that takes care of those. And as those things get added or removed from the enterprise, will be added and removed to the map. It is baked in to tag-based service mapping to only look at CIs that are operational, right? The install status, the operational status, the hardware status. We're talking about operational status of operational. So as you go through your decommissioning process of your virtual machines or decommissioning of applications that are running on them, you know, it is incumbent upon the process to flip those bits. So whatever we see in the CMDB key value table that is operational will be pulled into the map.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I just popped another quiz and it looks like we're getting quite a few answers. So I'm gonna leave that up for a couple more minutes, but just wanted to, we touched on some questions, and I just wanted to let you know that on February 11th, the second Tuesday of February, we had a scheduling conflict on the 3rd, so we pulled it a week earlier. My colleague John Mario, who has been awesome and helping me out in this session, and then ITOM SE Mike Gallagher are going to go through the tag governance leading practices. So please, register for that and get that on your calendar. It's going to be an awesome session. I wanted to thank Bill so much for all of his knowledge and helping better understand tag-based service mapping. Just wanted to let you know that this recording will be posted out on the community site and YouTube. And if you want to go and see any previous sessions, you can scan that code or pop that URL in a browser, and you can see the previous you can see the previous sessions. I want to thank everybody for all the great questions. I apologize we didn't get to all of them. We'll see what we can do about answering those on a future post on the community. So once again, thanks everybody. This concludes our session. And once again, appreciate your participation, all the great questions, and we look forward to seeing you on future sessions. Thanks, everyone.